Good morning and welcome to the July 24th meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. Madam Clerk.
Item 1 on the closed session agenda, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, County of Calaveras v. Pacific Gas and Electric Company et al., Sacramento County case number JCCP 4853.
Any public comments? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 2, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one case related to Kane County, Utah v. USA, case number 117CV01991EDK, pending in the United States Court of Federal Claims.
Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Item 3, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Rafael Calderon v. Calaveras County Superior Court case number 17CV42428.
Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll retire to closed session. Good morning. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance if you can? Madam Clerk, can you please lead us?
Let us begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please read out from closed session?
Report of closed session. Item 1, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, County of Calaveras v. Pacific Gas and Electric Company et al., Sacramento County case number JCCP 4853. There was no reportable action taken. Item 2, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D4, conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation, one case related to Kane County, Utah v. USA, case number 117CV01991EDK, pending in the United States Court of Federal Claims. On a motion by Supervisor Oliveira and a second by Supervisor Clapp, the board voted unanimously to approve the initiation of litigation by opting in to the class action lawsuit. Item 3, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, Rafael Calderon v. Calaveras County Superior Court case number 17CV42428. Supervisor Clapp recused himself from this discussion, and there was no reportable action taken.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving on to the next item, announcements.
Mr. Chair, I have an announcement.
Can we have Madam Clerk please read?
I'm sorry.
Into record.
Announcements. This is a time for board members and county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public.
Now, Mr. Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to inform you that the passing of Dan Leary by the Arnold area. Dan was one of the officers of the Moose Lodge, but more importantly, he was a member of the Ebbets Pass Fire District, a board member, being one of their directors there. There will be some celebration of life activities, I understand, on August 5th. And I have arranged with the board a request to have an official proclamation to be read August 14th at our next board meeting. Having said that, Dan was a pillar of that community, and he was a friend of mine. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Tess, his wife, and we're going to miss that young man and that gentleman. I miss him very much. I'd like to acknowledge Chief Johnson and members of the Moose Lodge here for this session. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on.
Yes, just a reminder that this Thursday, Central Sierra Economic Development Summit at Ironstone and Murphy's, beginning at 8:30 for those that are interested.
Any other announcements? Supervisor Garamendi?
Condolences to the family, Mike, and to you. Sorry about your loss, and to the family. Calaveras Unified School District is back in session today. Everybody be aware, kids are going to be running around, and new drivers with driver's licenses and whatnot. So welcome them back. We got a new principal at the high school, and school's on again. And I know it still seems like the middle of summer, but here we go. So heads up.
Any staff announcements? Sheriff DiBasilio.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. I have a couple things I'd like to bring to light. There's been some rhetoric in the community. I'll start off with my Bearcat, our Bearcat, the Bearcat. I keep hearing people saying that it's going to cost the county $400,000. It is not going to cost the county $400,000. This is a piece of equipment that the Sheriff's Department is going to be putting some funds from AB 443 together. The Friends of the Sheriff's Office is going to be donating some money, and originally we came to you folks for $200,000 because we thought it was going to be around $400,000. We didn't want to have to come back. There's about $137,000, maybe $140,000 that may need to be spent by the county. But I want the public and you board members to know that there are some other avenues of funding that I am looking at so that there is not a cost out of the general fund for that piece of equipment. And it is just that. And I want people to understand it is a piece of equipment that law enforcement needs to have. It's just like our guns or our batons or our pepper spray. It is a piece of equipment that we have in our toolbox. As my dad told me years ago, better to have and not need than to need and not have. This is a piece of equipment that can go into a residential area and pull civilians out because we have somewhere to put them to keep them safe. We can go down to the county government building and protect people. And what's even better is we can go to a school and put numerous children, your grandchildren, citizens, your children and your grandchildren inside of this vehicle to keep them safe. It is a tool. It is not just something that we want because we want it. Tuolumne County has one, Amador County has one, Stanislaus and San Joaquin County have these units. They are a tool. And again, I am working on some funding that will not cost the county anything. So,
Sheriff,
yes.
Can you explain to the public, people out watching, AB 443 funds, what those actually are when you bring that up?
Absolutely. AB 443 is a bill that was passed many years ago that the state of California gives rural county sheriffs with under 100,000 population $500,000 a year to use as non-discretionary. In the past, we have purchased vehicles, patrol vehicles. County Counsel?
County Counsel?
I just wanted to remind the board chair and Sheriff DiBasilio that this is for announcements of events, and that any further substantive discussion about an item that is not on the agenda really should be worked with staff to agendize an informational item for further substantive discussion. I just wanted to try to bring...
Reel me back in?
Right.
Okay, well then I will stop because the other item I have is along those lines also.
Okay.
So, thank you for your time.
Any other staff announcements? If not, we'll move on to the next item, public comment.
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Welcome.
I'm Phil Alberts from Mountain Ranch. I'll be back later with a legal request for a zoning change and a waiver of the fee. But 2 months ago, I filled out a form for that purpose. I was informed later that the form was not approved by the county council and it was of no value. That same day, I went to the county council's office and the girl at the front desk was unaware of the form. So somewhere between now and then and coming soon, I need a form to fill out so that I can come talk to you guys about this zoning change and waiver of the fee, because I have filled out a form that is of no value. I have here also the original zoning that was done years ago on this parcel of land and zoned it R1. I own 7 parcels of land on Washington Street in downtown Mountain Ranch, and out of those 7 parcels, I have 4 different zonings. I've lived in Mountain Ranch over 50 years and I've never zoned anything. This was done by your predecessors. And I have here a dozen comments why this should not have been zoned R1, but it was zoned by the supervisors regardless of this form. Also, I have the general plan that says this should be a commercial. The county community plan that we worked on 10, 15 years ago with dozens of meetings. We got a nice program going, but of course, it's not part of the general plan, which has not been finalized, I guess. So all of these things fall together, and that's my zoning change. So when the plan or the paperwork is completed that I can fill out a proper form, I'll be back. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could add, I will ask staff to grab this gentleman's contact information, follow up, and make sure that we sort out what the confusion is.
And Board Chair, I just wanted to clarify, this item was before the board last week, and the board did adopt a process, so certainly staff will work with this gentleman.
Good morning.
Morning.
Katinka McEwen, Calaveras resident. The ban is doomed to fail. It's already failing. The negative impacts on the local economy and environment are clear. Nearly all local businesses, at least those that are still in business, report sales are down 30 to 40%. Calaveras is not for business. As the Economic Development Director this board hired for more than $100,000 will desperately try to convince anyone willing to listen. The failure is not hers. No amount of money could convince any sane person this county cares about employers or employees. This board has effectively destroyed over 200 family businesses and caused the loss of hundreds of permanent jobs. The financial driver of the local economy has been deliberately squashed. The best and most compliant, law-abiding, tax-paying farmers have been told they're not the type of people this county wants here. Meanwhile, the cartels and gangs continue to operate without punishment or penalty, as they always have. This board claims to value so highly those abiding by the law, yet it bans those who are following the law and never arrests nor prosecutes those that don't. Seeing as you prefer to allow the worst offenders to operate with impunity, a better slogan would be Calaveras Sanctuary County, or maybe Calaveras for Cartels. These facts, coupled with the proven history that prohibition does not work, demonstrate the ban has only succeeded at one thing, and that is supporting the black market. Why is it, Dennis, you're so intent on growing the size of our local government, especially when you know full well there's no money to pay these additional county employees? You intend to pay for these positions by increasing building department fees, which will only further stymie reconstruction. Then, at the same time, tasking the self-funding enterprise of code enforcement to find the public into submission so they can get their weekly pay. Your solution to this county's structural deficit is to raise taxes, fees, fines, and increase new hires at the same time. This makes no fiscal sense. If you're not careful, everyone's going to find out that you are really a tax and spend liberal. Your burning desire to implement these changes to 806 are letting your Agenda 21 beliefs shine through. First of all, how are you going to pay for these meetings? Are you going to issue everyone an expensive permit to attend and then fine them when they do? What good are town hall meetings when the questions are being pre-screened by Ed Short and Ethan Turner? These are the very people whose salary depend on the success of 806. Would it be that this is the best way to eliminate the most difficult questions? Or is it just the best way to, as you said, educate the public with deceptive misinformation from Jack Cox at the last minute? Right or wrong? Dennis, really? This is how you defend your findings? We're also tired of your intentionally misleading policy gaffes and false concerns that change depending on who you're talking to at the time. In one breath, you're so immeasurably concerned about environmental degradation that you dismiss the benefits of 200-plus county-approved and regulated law-abiding farms. In the next, you want to dam the McCollum just like the Stanislaw. You don't want the county dependent on state and federal funding. Instead, you'd rather the poor local populace eat its own tail to enforce suburban HOAs and CCRs to maintain the county's rural quality of life. You've certainly made one thing abundantly clear. You are a politician, and you're wrong. Thank you.
Joel Pitto, Paloma, California. I have the dubious distinction of owning the Gwynn Mine, which I bought, our family bought from Jack's grandfather, which should be disclosed. Howsoever, he has been of no help or counsel in any way to the advancement of my project. He has no conflict of interest on this, and we agree or disagree extremely on some issues. So do not think that we are in collusion. Megan, you missed a lively discussion 2 weeks ago regarding your Rule 46. I said some impolitic things about a gentleman that's become a public figure, and under those conditions, there is no libel potential. I can say what I want to say, but what I said was true. Your Rule 46 is in obvious contradiction to the freedom of speech provisions in the Constitution. The fact that if it was enforced against me, while these people have been allowed to break every feeling, every rule, every letter of that law with impunity, particularly Mr. Clapp, who has cursed at the community. He called for the recall of Representative Garamendi, which is totally illegal and was never pursued in a timely manner. It has been disgraceful, the representation this county has endured. My important issue, however, is Gwynn Mine Road. It has come to my attention since I met with Jack on the property a week and a half ago that Gwynn Mine Road is no longer available for access of emergency vehicles, greatly endangering the public. You guys should have known about it. Emergency response did know about it. The concrete barricades were pulled closed just enough that an emergency vehicle could not get down that road. It is the most fire-prone canyon left in this county after the Butte Fire put a fire break there for us. This is the most likely place for a big burn that would take the entire town of Paloma as well as the Garamendi compound.
Thank you, Joel.
Please warn the public.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Good morning. Gary Stevens, District 1. I'm here to briefly discuss what happened 2 weeks ago at the July 10th Board of Supervisors meeting regarding the no-bid contract that was to be awarded to the sheriff's campaign manager. This was an inside backroom deal that would have gone forward as planned if it were not for some of the people and the citizens that spoke up against it. The contractor had signed it over a month ago. Well, it was almost a month prior to this coming before the board. I want to thank those citizens who came before the board and spoke out against it. This was over a $250,000 contract for 2 years to the sheriff's campaign manager. And again, I want to thank those people for coming and speaking out against that. They questioned why there was no bid process for contractors or other businesses in the county to bid on this. They questioned why it was a $250,000 going to that contractor. The other reason is, again, this is the sheriff's campaign manager. So why was this, under the radar until the public brought it out? This is yet another reason why I'm going to run for sheriff, is to bring back integrity and honesty back to the sheriff's office. Thank you.
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. Last week, in response to the disaster at Helsinki, I came and defined a bunch of words, starting with collusion and obstruction, and ending with treason and impeachment. 11 terms I defined last week. If you missed them, I'm very sorry. Get a dictionary. They're very important words. Today I'm going to define the word censorship. Censorship is taken from, in ancient Rome, one of 2 magistrates that were appointed to take the census and later to supervise public morals. Today, censorship is the suppression and elimination of certain words, thoughts, ideas in an effort to control and manipulate individuals, society, or government. Censorship is one of the first tools dictators and tyrants use when they're trying to control a mass of people. I've come before you before, and I've talked about the importance of free speech, free press, and free choice. Those freedoms which we are allowed in America to date, which are denied in third world countries and countries under tyrants and dictators. So when I heard of people wanting to censor speech in this forum, it was offensive to me. It reminded me of my inability to express myself in my younger years when I felt I might insult or injure somebody's feelings. Now that I'm old, I have no screening. I have no censorship of my own thoughts. I try to refrain from using 4-letter words in this forum, but I haven't used them in quite a while. And for the people that are defensive of criticism of the president, it reminds me just of what the president is trying to do now to individuals that disagree with him or criticize him. And I hope to not see censorship instilled in this forum, although over the years you folks have limited public speaking, public comment, time limits, and the number of days that we're able to come and express ourselves. So I'll just say free speech, free press, free choice. That's what America is about. Thank you.
Susan, do we have a problem? We're good? Okay.
Good morning. Today I'd like to ask the Board of Supervisors to consider a proclamation declaring August as TDS Awareness Month. The Urban Dictionary defines TDS as follows. Trump Derangement Syndrome, or TDS, is a mental condition in which a person has been driven effectively insane due to their dislike of Donald Trump, to the point of which they will abandon all logic and reason. Symptoms of this condition can be very diverse, ranging from hysterical outbursts to a complete mental break. TDS can also often result in the sufferer exhibiting violent, homicidal, or even genocidal desires. Sufferers have been known to wish direct harm on themselves, such as increased taxes, desires for an economic recession, and even nuclear war, provided that action might in some way hurt Donald Trump. Paranoia is also a common symptom of TDS. Sufferers have been known to believe that they are in some way being persecuted, and in some cases believe that they are about to be a victim of genocide. The paranoia does, however, not seem to be bad enough to make TDS sufferers act on their beliefs to the extent of attempting to actually leave the United States. If properly treated, sufferers of TDS can make a full recovery. Many sufferers have been known to grow out of TDS, yet many can often be treated by having their condition directly treated through the application of logical reasoning. It is also known that the products containing soy can exacerbate the condition. Please consider setting up safe spaces with coloring books, Legos, and stuffed animals where sufferers can go during Board of Supervisor meetings, at least until the November election, as outbursts of TDS may become uncontrollable and violent during this period. One of the ways to combat TDS is for sufferers to be reminded of President Trump's many accomplishments, some of which are the lowest unemployment rate among African Americans in history, the lowest unemployment rate among Hispanic Americans in history, the lowest rate of unemployment among women in almost 70 years, 31% growth of the stock market in Trump's first year was the best it has been under a president since FDR, the biggest tax legislation to be approved by Congress since 1986, Neil Gorsuch confirmation to the Supreme Court, as well as 23 federal judges, 12 appellate judges, a record for a first-year president, and 10 district court judges confirmed. Recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moving our embassy to Jerusalem. Decimating ISIS, overhauled and mismanaged Veterans Administration, and giving veterans more health care choices. I've only got a few seconds left. I want to thank you for considering this.
Good morning, gentlemen. Chris John Colts, District 2. I'd like to say that I don't suffer from TDS, but I do suffer from logic. And I'm quite perplexed that a preacher would say that, something like that about so many people without knowing them. I came today to talk about respect. I've been working out a lot lately since I have some free time, and I managed to fit into my old suit, so I thought I'd put it on and come up here and talk about respect. I have respect for you guys. I have respect for this chamber. I come and speak honestly and openly, and I don't denigrate other people. At the last meeting I spoke at, I watched the subsequent tape, and I was being disrespected by the staff as I was speaking, which I think is completely inappropriate. The staff works for me, and I expect better than that from them. I want to talk a little bit about history. I come from Tulare, California, which in the 30s was a big railroad town, the center of Tulare County, the county seat, the center of retail. The railroads crossed in Tulare. Highway 99 went through the middle of Tulare. My dad was the mayor in 1955. It was time to bypass the highway, and they said, well, we want to move it over clear on the edge of town, the edge of the new part of town, closer to Visalia. My dad said, you're going to orphan the town. You're going to destroy the downtown and ruin all of our businesses. We're going to preserve our downtown. Okay. We don't want the malls in Tulare. Let them go to Visalia. We're going to preserve our downtown. Today, Tulare is destitute. It has no downtown. It's completely vacant, has buildings that were built in the 1800s that are vacant. Visalia has a mall. Visalia has a vibrant downtown. Visalia is the county seat. This is what you're setting up here by making these decisions to insulate ourselves and not allow progress to happen. It's inevitable, gentlemen. You can't stop it. Tulare, I would encourage you to look at Tulare. If you want information on it, I can help you. It's exactly what's happening here, and you're perpetuating it. It's going to happen again. There's very little doubt. The next thing that's happened to me is, for a couple of years in here, people talked about fear of the growers. I'm in fear to walk around my property. I was never able to get the growers to come together. I had some ideas about maybe going for walks with people who were afraid to break this down and identify where the actual problems were, because the sheriff wasn't doing it. But we were reluctant to do that. We didn't want to offend the sheriff. I'm now in fear to be on my own property. I've abated completely. I'm in compliance. I'm afraid to be on my property for fear of being raided, even though I have complied. I don't feel safe in Calaveras County being on my own property. I dash up there and I get away. I don't know how we got to this point. I never broke the law. And I have respect for everybody here on both sides, and I really don't understand what's happening in the county. And I think we can do better. And I think a lot of it's about respect. Thank you.
Good morning again, Sheriff DiBasilio. To answer that young man's statement or rebut it, we're not going after the people who have abated. They're in compliance with the law, period. As far as what Mr. Stevens said, I think it was very clear by Mr. Lutz at the last meeting that he, in fact, is the one that approached Ms. Candace Kesey about the janitorial contract. I had absolutely nothing to do about that contract. It doesn't come out of my budget. It comes out of the CAO's office. So I guess I'm going to have to start doing what Mr. Trump does, is yell fake news, because people are consistently stating stuff that is untrue. I had nothing to do with that contract, period. It was never in my wheelhouse. The contract when SEI was doing it was not in my wheelhouse. So I absolutely did not have anything to do with that. And for people to make assumptions and make statements such as what Mr. Stevens did, I will use the term, it's a flat out lie, because they don't know what's going on within the county's administration's office. So I just wanted to be clear. I didn't know. Ms. Kesey has been in this county for many years. She is an excellent cleaner. She has numerous contracts, which is why Mr. Lutz approached her. It had nothing to do with the sheriff or the sheriff's office. Thank you.
Other public comments?
With that contract, puts them, meaning the sheriff's department, in a shaky position, and it should have been easily seen. As far as Trump is concerned, I think he's a big boy, and he's been taking pretty good care of himself, and I'm proud of him. I'm not proud of what our governor is choosing as his priorities, trying to make it faster to get to LA, and trying to siphon all our water off to LA. I don't agree with that, and he's taking all that money and putting it in those two projects. In the meantime, he's letting California burn down, and I really have an objection to that. Now, when California burns down, they're not going to be replacing the forest. They're going to let brush grow back. And I don't like that either. And I just think that there's a certain amount of insanity going on. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Morning. Just want to say I don't like being in the cast of characters who always come up here. I don't like the spotlight. I don't like listening to myself talk. I just like the camera and most of all that timer. I don't like criticizing you. I'd rather compliment you on a job well done or just stay home, trusting you to do your jobs. I'm sure you'd rather I did too. So come on, you guys, work with me. Last week, I requested the chair correct what I believe was a violation of Section 54954.2D3 of the Brown Act by way of the motion directing staff to set up so-called town halls by agendizing it for public comment. And the chair, as usual, summarily ignored my request. Didn't bother to ask counsel for an opinion. From the moment that passed on July 10, everything about the process has lacked transparency and opportunity for public input. The planning, preparation, schedule, format of the meetings, allocation of public funds has been done outside the public's view without informed consent of the governed. It's clear you don't want our input and are doing whatever you can get away with to avoid it, but I'm going to give you as much as my 3 minutes allows anyway. The fake town halls are kind of a fraud, like propaganda. We want to ask our elected representatives questions to find out if you understand the policies that you're implementing half as well as we do. The sham setup where questions are submitted for selection out of public view looks like an effort to sift out tough questions, choose softballs from a handful of sycophants, and maybe even let staff and officials insert questions that cast the BS policy that is 8.06 and its proponents in a favorable light. Town halls should happen face-to-face in real time. You shouldn't get to vet our questions and show up with canned, rehearsed responses coached by staff out of public view. So come on out of the closet. I challenge you to throw away your cue cards and just converse with us like real people. Earn our trust and respect. And I encourage every citizen and member of the public who asks a question about 8.06 to direct it to your supervisor, not the staff that wrote it. Hold their feet to the fire. Don't let them turn this into a fake staged campaign event at public's expense. I want to believe the people of this county deserve better, but maybe the people who don't show up and call you on this crap are getting the government they deserve. Jefferson nailed it when he said, "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance." Couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Good morning, Beth Whitkey, District 5. I have a couple of questions. Well, first off, County Council, is it legal for candidates to campaign during public comment? Because that seems a little not fair. So I'd like you to address that possibly. Also, the Candace Kesey contract, I noticed something that Supervisor Mills said. You were talking about background checks, and you mentioned that you have a red badge background check, federal, I think from your time as a contract laborer at Livermore or something. I'd like to see some documentation that shows that. And I'm also curious if your wife and if Kevin Ost were background checked before they were allowed access to your emails, because that seems like that could be problematic. I've passed background checks. It's not an easy process. It takes over a year or up to a year. And I just feel like anybody that has access to sensitive county emails should be background checked. And that should be made public. I think it should be made public if county supervisors have a staff who decided that. I submitted an application for the Area 12 Agency on Aging Advisory Commission. It's been about 6 months that I've been going through the process of possibly being able to volunteer on this commission. And this morning I withdrew my application because I'm happy to pitch in, but I was informed that it would have to be vetted through the Board of Supervisors, and I really don't see that happening with this board. I think that I would get some pushback, and it's somewhat humiliating to volunteer your time and be put through a lot of different steps and processes, only to have the sense that you're not particularly popular with the board, so you probably wouldn't get a fair hearing. So I'm going to find other ways to plug into the community. So I really would like some answers with that, because I see people come up here week after week, and we tell you our concerns and we ask our questions, and we don't get any answers from anyone. I think it's our right as taxpayers, as your constituents, that you talk to us, even if you don't like us. I think it's important that you talk to county staff, even if you don't like them. And I'm aware that you don't, that you freeze certain people out. I think that that's unprofessional, and I would like to see you elevate your behavior, especially you. You're my supervisor. I don't want to hear any more profanity from the dais, and it's not that I'm that delicate in my sensibilities. I just think you need to comport yourself in a more professional way. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Good morning, Board. George Fry. I would like to see a report at every board meeting of the sweeps of marijuana farms. Not so much the low-hanging fruit of the people that are already on the list, but the cartels, the Mexican mafia. I would like to hear a report maybe once a month so that we have some transparency about what's going on. I don't dislike the sheriff, but I'm concerned about going after the low-hanging fruit, which is all of the people who jump through all of the hoops and then bait and switch was performed on them. That's my issue. It's an issue that has to do with dishonesty. And some of you on the board get it. Some of you on the board will never get it. So please bring a report on the sweeps that you do so that there's more transparency. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Benjamin Stopper, District 5. Understanding part of the process here during public comment, you're not to respond to us because it's not on a specific agenda item, but applying to how we proceed. And understanding that a candidate coming to the board and speaking up for himself is legal in my mind. Whether it's ethical in the way they go about it is another question. Something that wouldn't be legal would be someone behind the dais supposedly getting paid going for candidacy, speaking up or for or against anybody else when it comes to electioneering, so on and so forth. Something I am really for is transparency. Process. There's a lot of questions out there about certain roads getting paved in certain areas that wasn't voted on by a majority of the board before the session of, during open session in front of people. How many decisions are made during closed session under the guise of possible litigation? These things are usually open to public purview, and we personally, and many people I talk to, would like more transparency and have our voices heard when it comes to these instances. And I believe that, you know, when it comes to public works and many other planning, that a majority board vote should be the direction of what the county does. And it's something to consider as we work forward, gentlemen. There's a lot of questions out there these days about, you know, how much is following the proper process, so on and so forth. We need transparency, and people need to know how these decisions are being made. Thank you.
Is there anybody else wish to speak?
Good morning, Board.
Hold on, Al. Is there any other people who would like to speak for public comment? Anyone else? Okay, we'll have these two speakers and then we'll close public comments.
Thank you and good morning. Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. When we recommended that the custodial contract go out to bid, it was not implying that there was any sort of collusion going on with the sheriff's office. We happen to know that we really respect Candace Geesley. She's received our Excellence in Public Service Award, and she's totally dedicated to helping the county, particularly the sheriff's office. I think it was just a normal mistake that occurs once in a while, and it's pretty hard to be a manager with so many responsibilities and to be completely flawless and never make a mistake. So that was just a mistake that Tim made, and which he admitted, and so it's really a dead issue. I really believe that if the sheriff were aware that she was going to get the contract without a bid, he would urge that it go to bid. He knows what kind of consequences it could have if it was if bidding was avoided, and particularly with her background in support of the sheriff's office. Thank you.
Hi guys, Ralph Copeland, District 4. Sheriff DiBasilio changed my little speech. Regarding his armored car, back in April, I believe, or early spring, DiBasilio was with another candidate at a meet and greet. And or Sheriff Rick, just for the sake I get tongue-tied with DiBasilio, he said the county has $5 million of Measure C money, and I'm going to be very stern that we need to set aside enough for 3 to 4 years for the team. I'm assuming that's the eradication team. What was Sheriff DiBasilio speaking about? Was he incorrect? He says the county has $5 million of Measure C money, and I'm going to be very stern that we need to set aside enough for 3 to 4 years for the team. So, $200,000 out of that $5 million shouldn't be a problem for his armored vehicle, right? Think about it, okay? Where did he get this $5 million of Measure C that's not around anymore? Next, Little John Road. Dennis, good job on the paving. We need striping and shoulder work to complete your job. That's been over 2 months now. If there's an accident on there, another lawsuit, Mr. Toffanelli, just like the threat of lawsuit throughout the cannabis vote. You've got a threat of lawsuit now with possibly someone crossing, someone hitting those signs. By the way, you're probably missing about 10 of the barricades with the low shoulder sign. So you can add that to the tally. And did any of you 4 supervisors figure out how he got Little John Road paved with next year's budget? Were you all okay with it? Did some of your projects get put aside so he can get 93 votes and not have to go through a recall? By the way, your mandate, Mr. Mills, is out the window. Your mandate now is 93 votes, or signatures, excuse me. You ran against yourself and you almost lost. Only 93 votes saved you from a recall. That's not good. You got to change your little spiel about that you have a majority, supporting majority. Anyway, gentlemen, Little John Road, get it striped, finish up the shoulder work, get your job done for a change. Gentlemen, talk to your constituents, explain to them how this happened. Thank you, guys. Ladies.
We'll close public comments, then we'll take a 10-minute break. All right, we're back in session. Madam Clerk, consent agenda?
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Any board members wish to pull an item?
Number 7.
Number 7. Any other item? Any staff member?
Yes, I would like to withdraw item number 12, and we're going to be, this is at the request of the contractor, and we would be bringing it back on August 7th at this point.
Okay. Any other staff member? If not, any member of the public? Yes, come to the microphone, please.
Bill McManus, could you pull item 8, please?
8?
Yes.
Any other item?
Number 13.
Number 13. All right, we'll bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion for the remaining items on the consent agenda.
So move the remainder.
I have a motion by Supervisor Mills.
I'll second it.
Second by Supervisor Clapp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 7, Madam Clerk.
Item 7 is from Behavioral Health Services Mental Health Program to adopt a resolution to authorize the Director of Health and Human Services Agency to sign the Mental Health Plan Agreement number 17-94576 with the Department of Healthcare Services for the provision of specialty mental health services, and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services Agency to sign Amendment number 1 to the Mental Health Plan Agreement number 12-89357 with the Department of Healthcare Services for the provision of mental health services.
Supervisor Mills, you
Yes.
pulled this item?
Thank you, Chair. The question is revolving around page 85 of our packet, where it says the agreement is between the state agency and the contractor, the state agency being the Department of Healthcare Services, the contractor, Calaveras County Behavioral Health Services, and for the period to expire. And it says in the maximum amount of $8,113,337,000. Do we have an agreement with the state as the contractor here for that amount?
Kristen Brinks, Health and Human Services Agency. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So, no, in just for a direct answer, that actually is the statewide amount. All counties are required to utilize the exact same templated contract that's been approved by the Federal Center for Medicaid Services, and this is the templated contract. This is the amendment to the previous version so as to not have overlapping contract terms, and the state's requiring us to sign both the amendment and then as well as the going forward 5-year contract. You'll see in the new one, they learned that this drew the attention of many boards with the exact same question, so they revised that to just be a $0 amount, and then all the regular funding sources go as is. So no, Calaveras County does not have $8 billion to provide mental health services, but the state does in totality.
Thank you. I noticed that the rest of it looked pretty clean. It was just that did not make sense as the agreement was written.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, we'll bring it back to the board. Look for a motion.
I move the item, Chair.
Motion by Supervisor Mills.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Oliveira. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 8.
Number 8 is from the Sheriff's Office to award an RFQ number 170324-19-968 for as-needed cannabis eradication services to the sole qualified respondent, Dirty Works of Sutter Creek, California, and authorize the chair to execute an agreement for the same in the amount of $100,000 for a term to expire June 30th, 2019.
Good morning, Jim Aceto, Captain from the Sheriff's Office. The agreement is, as noted by the board clerk, there was a process that we went through to get to this point. I know it was pulled by the public, so I'll step back and address any questions.
Mr. McManus, you pulled this item. You had a question?
Yes, maybe more than one.
That's fine.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to find out how this contract fits in with so many of the other contracts that have been before the board for approval. In the past, you've had truck lines of with under contract to haul dope down to the landfill. You've had helicopter contracts. You've purchased all sorts of equipment, which were for a certain period of time, and I think one or two of them had even an extension period to go with it. So where does this contract fit into this whole scheme of assets that are being pulled together for one purpose, and that's to take care of abatement? Since it was on the agenda as from the sheriff's office, I take it that only the sheriff's office has control over the services of this contractor. And as such, these would all be, or at least the majority of them would be criminal actions, since the sheriff doesn't get involved with too many of the civil matters. So is there some way we find out how these contractors are working with the sheriff's department? Who's going to be the first person to step on site? Has the site been cleared? Has there been any hazmat triage done when we've got contractors and personnel going onto the property? What we found is it's very difficult to get the protocols and get them all put together. There's two flow charts that run concurrently. One is the civil and one is the criminal. We'd like to know who is in control of these and where do they come together? Is there a nexus anywhere for services, results, DA, whatever the case may be? I've asked, I've requested public documents. If you don't ask for the right thing in exactly the right way, you don't get it. You just get a letter back saying, we don't have that. So I'd like to see about maybe getting a meeting with whoever's in charge of this thing, if anyone is really in charge, that coordinates between the civil and the criminal actions that are taking place and where this contract fits in. Is this going to be strictly for criminal actions taken over by the sheriff's department? And I'd like to know, with a $100,000 contract and looking at the schedule of equipment and personnel and everything else that this contract allows for, I know there's no such thing as an average grow, but if we could come up with an average grow or pick a number like 1,000 plants, how many grows would be eliminated or abated with a $100,000 contract? And also, since this is a multi-year contract, can you spend money in the out years, years 2 and 3, move those forward into year 1 if you need the services this year? So I know that's a lot, but it's a complicated subject. We're just trying to get it straightened out. Thank you.
Yes, the questions I have is, where is this $100,000 coming from? Is it from general fund? And has any consideration been made to contract with a lab or another entity which processes marijuana rather than destroys it? And that may take care of having to spend money on illegal grows to abate them. Thank you.
Any other public comments, questions? If not, Captain Cheeto.
I was writing as fast as I could. Let me see if I can address a few of these. This is not a sheriff's office contract. It was run jointly with the county admin office. If you look at the front of the agenda item, we requested assistance from the county admin office, and it was a multi-department group that reviewed the applications. Secondly, how does this fit with the other contracts that we have? Depending upon the size of the grow, the terrain of the grow, whether it's criminal or civil or both, which at times it is both, we make an assessment on whether or not we have the equipment in-house, meaning within the sheriff's office and or code enforcement, and we make a determination at that point whether we can remove it without using a subcontractor. We try to use our own equipment and our own staff to remove it. We do have trailers, but sometimes the grows or the scope of the operation exceed what we have as far as equipment in-house. That's what these contractors are for. They help come in and expedite the process. This particular contract has a subcontractor that actually will deliver a bin to the site, and the driver has to wait there, and there's some security protocols that go on with that driver and with that bin to make sure that we're not losing any of the marijuana and that it's transported securely and safely to where it could be dumped. As to how this contract fits with Code enforcement, this contract is predominantly for criminal investigations. However, we do joint cases with code enforcement. Sometimes there are criminal violations that are running concurrently with county code violations, so they're not always entirely separate. Who steps in and does the hazmat evaluation? And I'm not sure what the question was behind that, but we have staff trained in our marijuana unit. We have PPE for those employees, and that's covered under a pre-incident briefing that all employees go through. The subcontractors work at the direction of Sheriff's Office personnel on scene at the event. That's who they take their direction from, and that's who they are monitored by. There was a question about average grow, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to complete writing down the entirety of that question, Mr. McManus. If you're wanting to know what the size of an average grow is, it's really dependent. Can we move money out into years 2 or 3? The contract sits as is. We are bound by the scope of that contract, so if anything is going to exceed that contract, we would need to come back to the board and or get a signature from the CAO if we were going to move away from that. Obviously, county council would be involved. The lab, as far as the sheriff's office, working with a lab to do something with the marijuana, I don't think the county would appreciate us taking marijuana and shipping it off to a lab to be used by someone else. I think there's an inherent amount of litigation associated with that. Once it touches our hands, we are responsible for it, and we certainly don't want to put that back into the public or lose control of that product or what have you. I think there would be a significant amount of liability, and I don't think the sheriff's office should be in the business of handing marijuana over to any lab other than a testing facility for evidentiary purposes. I believe that answers the public's questions. So, is there any questions from the board?
Where does the money come from?
The money comes from the general fund, and that was discussed during several previous board meetings.
Supervisor Clapp, your light's on?
Nothing.
No? All right. Thank you, Mr. Macedo. Any other questions, comments? Call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, so move the item.
With a motion by Supervisor Oliveira.
I'll second that.
Second by Supervisor Clapp. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Item number 12, withdrawn by the CAO. Do we need a motion or a vote on that to remove it? No? So we'll move on to item number 13.
Item 13 is from the Administrative Office to approve the fiscal year 2018-19 Administrative Match Agreement between the County of Calaveras and Area 12 Agency on Aging in the amount of $89,892 and authorize the board chair to sign the agreement.
Bonnie, you pulled this. You had a question?
Yes, I did. Where does this $89,000 come from? Is it from the general fund? And who is matching it? If the Area 12 Agency on Aging encompasses 4 counties, am I to understand? Does each county contribute $89,000, or is it rationed out according to population? And what is the money used for? Thank you.
Any other public questions on this item?
I guess I could answer Bonnie's questions. I'm on the Area 12 Advisory Commission. It's done by population of the 4 counties, Mariposa, Tuolumne, Calaveras, and Amador. And I think we're about in the middle in terms of the money that is spent every year for it. And it's used for a myriad of things that Area 12 on Agency is doing.
Dig into the microphone.
Okay, how's that? So anyway, I support this, so I just wanted to let you know.
That it? Public? CAO? This is your...
Yes. In clarification, and as Mr. Fry stated, that yes, it is the breakdown is based on population within the the 5 JPA counties: Alpine, Amador, Calaveras, Mariposa, and Tuolumne counties. The funds are used as required match. They are general fund, in answer to Bonnie's question, and that's specifically stipulated with Older Americans Act and Older Californians Act, that there needs to be the local funding match. Primarily, you're looking at federal dollars, because there isn't much left on the state side for money that it's pulling down. Services that it provides in those counties include our congregate nutrition sites at our senior centers, our home delivered meal sites, social support services, social work for assisting older adults access what available programs there are, caregiver support programs for some of the homebound seniors to get respite care. Those types of services are what the match goes for.
Okay. Bring it back to the board. Looking for a motion.
I'll move that.
I have a motion by Supervisor Clapp.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Mills. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll now move on to the regular agenda. And at this time, the board will recess as the Board of Supervisors and convene as the Air Pollution Control Board. So, Madam Clerk, item number 18.
Item 18 is from the Air Pollution Control District. Acting as the Air Pollution Control District Board, authorize the CAO to sign grant agreement with the California Air Resources Control Board to implement AB 197 emission inventory.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning, Brad.
I'm here this morning as your air pollution control officer, and our air district, your air district, operates without general fund monies, and we want to keep it that way. And in order to keep it that way, I've got a couple grants that we're applying for, and this first one is this Assembly Bill 197 that we'd request that the CAO be authorized to sign it. Assembly Bill 197 was signed into law in September 2018, and the overall intent of that Assembly Bill was to give the legislature more control over the California Air Resources Control Board. And it did that through appointing non-voting members to their board, having term limits and a number of things. But part of that Assembly Bill was to establish this emissions inventory district grant program. It seems like all the programs we have now are really becoming more and more driven by data, and the state wants to put into this integrated emissions visualization tool. We're going to end up working on that with the state one way or the other, and this agreement would give us some resources to help defray some of our costs.
Any board questions? Any questions from the public on this item?
Vicki Reinke, Angels Camp. I read some of this as to what the inventory would be, but I would hope to have better explanation. Are we going to decide whether we contribute to air pollution? What's the end result of this? And maybe my question is because I don't see a big need in Calaveras County for any of this craziness about our air pollution and global warming and all those things. So I wanted to know what this will help us with, or are we just going to be rubber stamping something to the state that doesn't really pertain to us? Thank you.
Any other public comments on this?
I'd like to address the California legislature and the governor. They are the ones that are polluting the air. They are not giving enough money to the fire people so they can hit it hard and fast so it doesn't get away. And I think that we could do without those tunnels, siphoning our water off to someplace else so that we can take a shower in a thimbleful of water. I think that the environment would be a lot better off if we did not allow these fires to get away. Thank you.
Any other public comments? If not, close public comments. Brad, you want to try and answer some of the questions that were...
Sure. One of the first things I asked the Air Board is, well, what happens if we don't do this? You know, we don't agree to this grant. Well, we're still going to be essentially doing the same work. It has to do with being on conference calls and helping put together this visualization tool that's required by the legislature because of this assembly bill anyway. I asked where the money came from. The money came from when the legislature passed this, the Air Board went back with a supplemental budget, and got this funded. Regarding our need for it here, the speaker was essentially right. We have one facility in the county that would qualify for this reporting, and that's all we have. So I guess this money is just going to help us pay for our costs and time of staff time that we'd be spending anyway working on this project, assisting the state, participating in conference calls, giving input.
Is there a time frame to use this money?
It's for the year, yeah. There's for the fiscal year.
The state's fiscal year, September?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Is there any other board questions? Supervisor Mills?
Yeah, on page 205, this has to do with your milestone descriptions. And it says that there's a submittal of the draft final report to CARB on March 1st, 2019. Are we going to be on time in getting that information to them, or you don't see that as really being a difficult?
I don't. We only have one facility.
So it's just a matter of going and getting that information, pulling it together, plugging it in.
Correct.
So this is only to cover the administrative costs, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Any other board questions? If not, look for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Oliveira. Any other discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll move on to item number 19. Madam Clerk.
Item 19 is also from the Air Pollution Control District to authorize the board chair to sign the grant memorandum of understanding between CAPCOA and the district for implementation of the wood smoke reduction pilot program and find exempt from CEQA.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This program is a little bit more exciting, a little more positive than the last one, because this actually will fund replacement of uncertified old wood stoves with new certified ones. It's based on an income criteria, so that if you're a lower income, it would basically pay for the whole replacement and installation. If you're above that income level, it would pay some $1,000 towards it. And I do know that we get complaints about wood burning stoves and smoke that settles in and inversions, up in our foothills, and nobody wants to see an ordinance mandating something like this, but this is a purely incentive program to encourage people to swap out those stoves. And there's $5 million that was set aside in AB 1613 for this. There's more money available. We don't really know what the demand will be here in our county, but it'll be interesting to find that out and put together this program for that.
Board questions? Supervisor Mills.
I'm going to flip this to a what if. and that is what if this moves from an incentive to a mandatory program, and how quickly could that occur?
Well, that's a possibility always in everything, so I couldn't answer that question.
My concern is that we may be wanting them voluntarily to come and participate, but for those who do not wish to do so, at what point are we going to be doing like Modesto, where we're looking at the smokestacks and fining people because they're burning to keep their house warm because they can't afford to do it any other way? And we do have those kind of homes in our communities.
That is definitely a valid concern. I don't know that passing on this grant and savings to people is going to impact that possibility, one way or the other. But there's always that concern with something starts small and it gets larger, So, but I don't think that this program here is going to make a difference one way or the other. So,
I look at the 95-cent water tax and how quickly that could morph into something much more serious for the rest of the consumers. This likewise, to me, is just a beginning step of putting a foot in the door here in the foothills and getting us to do something that may not be something that we really want. So I just have some concerns.
Supervisor Garamendi, I think your light was on.
How will you advertise and promote this program?
We haven't started that yet. I'm not sure exactly how we would do that. That'd be part of implementing this thing, would be to get the word out there.
Okay. When you begin to move forward on that, if you could bring that to the Board of Supervisors, not for approval, but so we could help you this is a great opportunity for our citizens. I want to make sure they're aware of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I concur with Supervisor Mills. In my district, we live in the mountains. A large percentage is wood-burning stoves. And once again, I'd be very concerned with the fact that it's advisory now, and here's a chance to help those that want to convert. But what happens when it becomes mandatory? I think it's a little bit too premature. I wish we had more information to see what's going to be in that crystal ball. But the bottom line is I've seen this occur in numerous counties down in the Bay Area where wood-burning stoves are a luxury to some, if you will. There are days you don't use wood-burning, and those days are increasing. So I don't think I'm real supportive of this program right now, to be quite honest with you.
If I could just comment real quickly on that, we do have complaints that come in from your district about smoke, and to me, something like this is probably the best way to prevent government coming in and doing a mandate. I know that if the board opposes that, your district would oppose it very strongly, but to me, something like this, it's an incentive, might actually be preventive from what you're concerned about. So.
Supervisor Clapp?
Yeah, I would support this because if they come in and ban it anyway, they're going to ban it. But at least this here is funds that will be for people on low income that can't afford to do it. And so at least make that available for people that don't have the funds to do it. This is basically a grant that will be going to people that are low income that can actually do the update. Without it, they're just not going to heat their house.
Any other board comments? Seeing none, I'll open up to public comments.
Al Sagana Taxpayer Association.
Order. Al, can you go back and get in line? There are several people that were in line waiting to speak.
I didn't get too concerned until I started lighting the bonfires and then getting pitchforks there.
Thank you.
Ben Stopper, District 5. No offense taken, Al. I grew up in these mountains. It's been a favorite pastime, going out in the woods, being a provider, cutting the wood, keeping our houses warm. When I looked to buy a new house in the past, a wood stove was part of that house when I looked for a house. It's something, It's not just a cheaper way of heat. It's part of a pastime that, you know, I grew up with and I appreciate. This time I agree with Supervisor Clapp, and this grant's providing a service. The way I see it, and my question would be, is if they change state law, would this agenda item here prioritize that into law in Calaveras County? I would assume you would need another agendized item to be approved, and that this would in no way stomp on our rights when it comes to having a wood burning stove and using it. That law would come down in the future, and at that point you as a board would need to approve that and push the process forward. My other question would be, what actual type of cleaner wood burning stove is required, and how do they facilitate that being put into people's houses, so on and so forth? Thank you.
Jennifer Stewart, District 2. I totally disagree with this thing. I have a wood burning stove, a cook stove, and an insert. The possibility of us contributing to smoke and carbon in the air for what we deal with fires around here is just so minimal. I can't even imagine 4 of my lifetimes that I would put up even a smudge that would compare to anything that happened with the Butte fire, what's going on with Ferguson and everything. I see this as a power grab. I see it where the government wants to get in everything in my life, and I don't want it. I plain and simple don't want the government in my wood stove. I would put in a catalytic converter if that's necessary. If my neighbors were complaining, I'd do it. And if we have a bunch of neighbors that are up in your area, we could have a volunteer group of people who say, let's pool some money and do this. We just did it for the people whose house burnt down. You know, there's other ways to do this besides letting the state of California get in our back pocket one more time. I can't see it.
Vicki Reinke, Calaveras Republicans. We just had our board meeting and we talked about this issue. So I wanted to make comments, and we are in agreement with Supervisor Mills and Supervisor Oliveira that this could just lead to something we really don't want in our county. So my first comment was programs that take from one part of our economy or our taxpayers to pay or redistribute to another for the benefit of government control. This is happening everywhere, and quite frankly, we watch it. We're tired of it as citizens, and this is one more. I will agree that it's a power grab. Yeah, it sounds wonderful that we're going to help some people of low income, but whatever happens to that is the people who can't afford it get it. The people who are wealthy can do it. The people in the middle always get squeezed out of all of this stuff, and then it becomes mandatory, which I believe in new construction it is mandatory, isn't it? So see, they've already done that to anybody in the future that comes here. They cannot have a wood stove anymore, so they can't use the free wood that's on their properties. This is very frustrating. And some of the questions were asked that I had, and this subject is in the new EIR for the general plan. In the EIR, they want it put into the general plan that we will incentivize people to switch out their wood stoves. Again, why are we doing this? Why are we telling individuals how to live their lives? If we had a real big pollution problem, that would be another thing, but I'm not so sure that we do. With 45,000 people in this county of, I forget how many thousands, 100,000 acres or whatever, because I agree the problem is when we have forest fires. And does our state do anything about that to prevent those things? No. So again, just we hope that you will think like that as our representatives. You look at us as the people and not just follow along with what the government's putting down on us and doing to us. And And I had the question, is this enough money? And it sounded like that might be enough money to pay for one of those units. I'm trying to see. And what is a certified wood stove? What does that look like? And they have to destroy any old stoves. Again, someone who can't afford anything now has nothing. They did that with cars when they did the car program through the state. Well, we're just going to crush all the old cars. Well, guess what that did? It left poor people with no means of a transportation because they can't afford a new car. And there's supposed to be a training. Are they kidding me? Thank you.
Now, Al, now.
Thank you. Al Sagala Taxpayer Association. We concur with Vicki. She hit the, even though she went over time, she hit the nail on the head. We don't need more regulations. There is no problem with wood burning stoves. 20 years ago, we had changes to improve the amount of smoke by the installation of catalytic converters. And where you buy a new stove, it had to have the catalytic converter. It made sense. It worked. We don't need any more state regulations. And also, we don't need anything that smells of Agenda 21, which is about crushing our economy. We don't need scarcity. We don't need to have to live our lives chasing scarcity. No more. Stand up to it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Sarah Kancianich. I'm from District 1. I have a wood stove, and we use it all winter long, and I'm pretty sure it's a newer version that doesn't emit any type of air pollution. It has filters and whatnot, and forgive me, I don't know if it's catalytic converter. We have that. But what I think this is being blown way out of proportion. I think what we're talking about is funding to help people replace older stoves that might be inefficient and contribute to air pollution with new versions with free money. So I don't think it is, right, it's grant money that we're talking about, $5 million, he said, and it's going to be given to people who would want to use that to make their stoves more efficient or, less likely to contribute to air pollution. And so I don't think this is a government grab or anything like that. I think what it is grant money to help people have more efficient stoves. And that's all. Thanks.
I'm from District 2, and when I had to rebuild my house, I have one of those catalytic converter stoves too. And so I really don't think this is an issue. I don't think we need the government involved. I don't think we need somebody telling us that we have to switch out our stoves, and then the next thing you know, they're going to tell us we all have to have sprinklers in our house that didn't do any good anyway. So I just feel that this is just one more thing that the government's trying to tell us to do. Thank you.
I'm Will Moore from Rancho Calaveras, and all I am is puzzled. And I don't know who is granting what to whom. It says authorize the chair to sign a grant, but who is granting what to whom? I guess I should have read the packet, but anyhow, it's kind of confusing. Thank you. I do have a wood stove, but there's never been a fire in it, so.
District 1, some of my questions have been asked, ask them again, is it doesn't tell us on here what kind of, again, wood stoves you're going to have to convert over to. We happen to be a home that heats our home with wood.
I know at some point our stove's going to need to be replaced, and then we're going to automatically have to upgrade it because we can't buy an older one and put it in there. And I hate to burst anybody's bubble this morning, but there's no such thing as free money. It all comes from somewhere. We also know a lot of seniors that heat their homes with wood as well. And I know there have been times when free wood was available. I know when they were building the new courthouse, they were giving away wood from the trees they chopped down, and that helped a lot of seniors that, needed something inexpensive to heat their homes. Is this going to be wood pellet stoves? What are you switching to? You force people to a wood pellet stove, they can no longer cut their own wood and burn it, then they have to purchase that. You're forcing them then to pay for their energy where a lot of people can get it for free. It's very tempting to say, yeah, I want to get that free money and upgrade my stove now, but there's just not enough information here. What are they telling us that I've got to upgrade it to? What is my fuel going to then be? Because if we can't heat our home with wood, the cost of heating our home with propane just wipes us out during the winter. We've tried it. It costs 3 times as much to heat with propane as it does with wood. Our one fireplace will heat our entire house. And that's what we use. We've never had our neighbors complain about it. We've never complained about our neighbors who also burn wood. Even on those nights where the wood kind of sits down a little lower, we just keep, you keep your windows closed. You don't have to smell it. Where I live, we also smell the campfires from Comanche. Never complained about those. I smell that. I think vacation. I think people are enjoying themselves. So we just need more information before we go forward with this, I think. Thank you.
I think that if Governor Brown and the state legislators are so concerned about our air and the quality of it and the environment, that they should try to give the fire people more money so they can hit the forest fires hard and fast. That is where we're getting air pollution all summer long, every summer. They need to give law enforcement the money to track down the people that are starting these fires, and they need to give the fire people the money to put them out quickly. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Yes, my question is for both of these air pollution control district agenda items. How much money is involved?
We've already covered the other one.
Yes.
So
How much money is involved in each one of these grants? And I heard one comment, 7,000. Is that 7,000 per person, or is that 7,000 for our county? And this is not a requirement. This is an option, an offer. And I remember a few years back when they were insisting that we change our refrigerators because our refrigerators were not functioning efficiently. And PG&E at that time came in for low-income people and replaced my refrigerator. And as I have one house with a wood stove, I know that it's not just pollution, creating less pollution, it's also to create more heat in the home. These stoves will be better, more efficient heaters, using less wood and creating less pollution. So as an option and as a low-income person, I would be interested in replacing my old Franklin fireplace, very inefficient, but keeps my little hovel warm in the wintertime, with something more efficient, more updated. And if I didn't have to pay for it, I know I've already paid for it in taxes. So if it's available, I would like to see that opportunity extended to the people in Calaveras County.
All right, we'll close public comments.
Can I say something?
Sure.
From my understanding, it's a $5 million program that statewide. I think our share will be $18,000. If we don't take our share, that will go somewhere else. They're going to spend the $5 million. And I would just like to see the $18,000 come to our county so someone like Bonnie can upscale her heating system. And, and this isn't mandating anybody where they have to go out and do it. This is something like the refrigerations and stuff that people is qualified. It's to save energy. I don't see this as something that's putting something out there that you have to do this or you can't use your wood fireplace anymore. I have a wood fireplace in my house I love. They do make a new stove that you can actually do a wood burning stove, and it has a catalytic converter in it, but they're very, very expensive. I hope I'm close to the number on these. Thank you.
Supervisor Mills, your light's on?
Yes, Brad, could you correct the number on the grant?
Yeah, the grant is for $100,000, $90,000 of it for these voluntary replacements. $10,000 approximately is for administration of the program. So that would help our air district survive. It's totally voluntary. The stoves that you see in any store, those are all certified stoves. It also allows electric heat, propane. So those other sources are included in this too. And I just think that the best way to prevent more difficult government regulations in the future is to prevent the need for it now. And I think this is something that's a small step. We don't have a huge problem, but in the winter, when there's the inversion set in, the smoke does settle in the little valleys and things. So anyway, I don't know if that answered the questions.
How many stoves or how many homes do you hope to affect with this grant?
Well, we really don't know what the demand is going to be because we don't know how many of those stoves are out there. But the grant is set up for $3,500 voucher for a low-income person, $1,000 voucher for a person above that threshold. So you just have to kind of divide one into the other, I guess.
So you
just don't know what the demand's going to be, Supervisor.
Yeah, you could be anywhere from 20 to 90, just somewhere in that range, correct?
Yeah.
And there's over 20,000 homes in Calaveras County? So we're going to affect 20 to 90 residences out of 20,000, and this should make a big difference?
Well, every bit helps. There is more money actually available to get transferred in if there was a need for it. We chose not to go after additional money to find out, first of all, whether their demand would be here. But we would certainly try to do everything we could to get to serve our people as much as we could with additional money if it becomes available.
The town site of Vallecito is actually Spanish for Little Valley. It's that for a reason. It's because it's a pocket. And in the wintertime, with the inversion layers you talk about, yes, but it's part of living in that community. People who live there, they know what they're getting into. It's people who haven't lived in that and come from cities or somewhere else that suddenly move in and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't like the barking dog next door, I don't like the chickens in my yard, and I don't like the smell of smoke. I mean, good grief. There's got to be some limitations here as to why you live here. So I just wanted that number out there. It's going to be somewhere between 20 and 90 based upon the numbers that you're giving us now. Thank you.
Supervisor Oliveira, your light's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was, once again, going along that same road with you. I was just looking up the cost of wood-burning stoves in California. These are replacement stoves, which are required by California EPA laws.
Yeah, they're the ones that you find in the stores.
Yeah, and they run anywhere from $700 to $4,000 at a quick look. So if we've got 90,000 less 10,000 for administration, or is it 90,000 total? Probably looking about 24, 26 stoves, depending if that's going to be a $3,500 thing. So I once again agree with Supervisor Mills. We are looking down the road that this could be mandatory to replace your existing stoves, which it is now under EPA law. So where are we going with this law? It seems like the law is already in place. Am I wrong?
Well, this was an assembly bill that made this money available. It's going to get spent on wood stoves.
I understand.
You know, maybe here, maybe not here, but it's, that was the purpose of it, is to do something to help the air quality.
I'm still not convinced. I'm sorry.
Supervisor Garamendi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are simply talking about approving a grant that's going to bring money to help low-income people in our community. We're not debating global climate change or state of California. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we accept this grant.
I would second that.
Well, I have a couple comments. First, to answer Mr. Stopper's question about state law, if state law comes down, there's nothing we can put in an ordinance to change the state law. The state law will be the state law as far as where we are on air control and what's required for us to do. This, again, is a voluntary thing. It's not mandatory. And again, we go back to advertising it to get it out there for people that want to take advantage of it, if they want to take advantage of it. They don't have to. It's not being pushed on them. It's not being told that they have to do it. It's not a law. In giving the way California has been going, and we will have a change of governors come November, with the current governor, I wouldn't doubt that sooner or later, as we go into the future, that this law will come in effect. Right now, it's affecting the valley. You can't burn there on anything. Right now, this doesn't even affect people that have outside pits that they put on their property, on their balconies, or not their balconies, but their back porches or whatever. They sit around at night and burn. It's not affecting anything of that, but you can't even do that in the valley areas. Just no burning at all. So I don't think this has anything to do with pushing that from some of the comments that I've heard, pushing that on to anybody. Again, this is simply voluntary. And it's a mandatory thing. There's nothing mandatory to do about it. So I would support it simply from some of the comments that I heard from Supervisor Clapp about low-income people not having the ability, having an old outdated stove that may be falling apart, that may be they have to use because they have no other choice. If we get the advertising out there to them, at no cost to them, they'd be able to replace that. And it may be a benefit, and it may actually, some of those old stoves, you just don't know what condition some people are using. We may be saving some lives if they take advantage of this, that their house could be burnt down simply because the flute's falling apart and what have you. So I am in favor of this. So I have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi. I have a second by Supervisor Mills.
Board Chair, before you take action, I just wanted to clarify, the item before you also includes a recommendation to make findings that this action is exempt from CEQA, and it's outlined in the memo before the board. So I would just ask that the board consider also making those necessary findings that this action is exempt from CEQA.
Chair, I'd like to modify my motion to accept this grant award and make this exempt from CEQA, finding that this is exempt from CEQA.
Okay.
I'm going to second that.
Your second stands. Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Before we call for a vote, I'd like to make a comment. In some research I've just got done doing on the websites regarding this issue, it's pretty much established that the EPA rules right now require that we have certified stoves. So I think we've reached that point in our government for the replacement. Having that knowledge, I would probably change my position on this, seeing that that threat has become a reality as far as government controlling what we do under the EPA laws. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I have a motion by Supervisor Garamendi, a second by Supervisor Clapp. I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Passes 4-1.
Thank you.
All right, this time we will recess as the Air Pollution Control District Board and reconvene as the Board of Supervisors and move on to item number 20.
Item 20 is from the Economic Development Department to receive a semi-annual presentation from the Calaveras County Economic Development Department regarding economic development activities for the last 2 quarters of fiscal year 2017-18.
Good morning, Chair Tofinelli and Honorable Board. I have a short, brief presentation for you, and I'm ready to start.
No, push it down hard and hold it. There you go. You're on. You're good. Red light's on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kathy, you'll need to speak directly into the microphone.
Okay.
You need the 5-minute break to get set up?
If you'd like to do that, that's fine.
Yeah, let's take 5 minutes and let her get her presentation. So, good. We're back. No, push hard. There you go. Now you're there.
Hello. Kathy Galino, Calaveras County Economic Development. Thank you for having me today. I want to give a brief update on what I've been working on the last 6 months. So a little bit of brief history, and this is a history as I understand it. As far as economic development in Calaveras County, we had in '76 the Central Sierra Economic Development District that was created. Unfortunately, it was closed in 2011 due to some economic difficulties and financial difficulties. It was resurrected, and which Calaveras County is a part of. I found this very interesting because we also work with Mariposa, Alpine, Tuolumne, and Amador County is now a participant. They are engaging stakeholders and actually have been successful in obtaining a grant of $178,000, which I will talk about later on in the presentation. That's for the 5 counties. We also have the Calaveras County Economic Development Company, which was a 501c4. They're no longer around, but they have some great information and history and documents that I would like to migrate over to the county since they've already been created. And then, of course, in 2017, you wonderful people decided to actually have your own Calaveras County Economic Development Director, which I feel is a very important thing to have in our county to be competitive and move forward. So the mission is to work collaboratively to attract, retain, and grow business that's here. We want to provide free and confidential assistance to businesses so that they can be successful and go forth and do well. We also want to enhance the economic viability and sustainability, not just for the businesses, but for the communities and the people that live here. We want to provide the tools for success and encourage a diverse array of businesses. A lot of times businesses or economic development gets focused just on one industry, whether it's retail or housing or whatever. It's nice to have a diverse array and to really look at the different resources that we have available in our county through, our natural resources, through our beautiful tourism and agriculture. And of course, we want to preserve our history. So we want to be very careful in how we do things and do things responsibly. So the mission is to work collaboratively. There are many organizations that are out there that I've been working and meeting with. I've been pretty busy attending business association groups, Rotaries, and working with the different, the Chamber of Commerce, the Visitors Bureau. Enhancing the economic viability of our county. And wow, this looks like a replete slide. Uh-oh, what happened? What happened? No. Pardon me. Goals. So attracting the right business to the right area is crucial. There are many different parts of our county that have different resources, different land uses. So we need to make sure that when we're looking at attracting businesses, that we know what our inventory is and know where these businesses can go, and connecting them to the right resources so that they can not just open their doors, but be successful and grow. To do this, I'm working with the brothers and sisters of our county and other leaders in our county to facilitate team meetings so that we can understand, the businesses can understand what the expectations will be, what the timelines will be, so that things are realistic and very transparent. We want to explain the environmental regulations. As we all know, they can be difficult, and especially for a small business, very frustrating and changing. So it's nice to be able to provide that clarity to the businesses right out of the gate. We want to identify and develop business incentives. This doesn't just mean money. There's other incentives that are out there through our partner organizations and our utility providers. And we want to increase revenue to the County of Calaveras. Other actions are marketing. I cannot tell you how many people I've spoken to, not from here, that had no idea where Calaveras County was or who we were. To some regard, that's a good thing because we are a small rural county and we do want to respect and honor that, but we also have opportunity for responsible growth. So I developed the economic development, I should say actually, our IT folks developed the Calaveras County Economic Development website, and has been very, very successful in getting businesses and industry to my phone, to my email, and connecting us. We are on the homepage of the county website. And then with that and some encouragement, I developed the Facebook page, which at last count, I think we had 172 hits for last month. And working on brochures and handouts, which I think are important to get the word out. And then attending business conferences and association meetings, Rotaries, and talking to people. This is just such a great opportunity to get out and get the word out. So the plan is for this fall to work with my partner organizations to actually do business walks where we will be going into communities and just talking to businesses and finding out how things are going. Are things going well? What can we do better? Do you have concerns? And why do you like doing business here? We want to make it short and brief because business owners don't have a lot of time to chit-chat. But we also want to let them know that we're here as a resource and that we care. And then obviously collect that data in the survey form and then report back. And from that, the plan is to develop a plan. We do not have a formal economic development policy or a plan of strategic planning. So I really want this information so that we can move forward and make good on our word. And also working with other county agencies on developing fact sheets and flow charts. I'm not a flow chart person personally, but a lot of people like to have that map so they can see, okay, I need to do this first, this second, so on and so forth. And it streamlines the process, and it makes it easier for the other agencies as well. So in moving on with more actions, oh, stop, sorry. We want to determine where new or expanding businesses are in the process. We want to know the resources they need. I've received several calls, and I'll get to that in the end, and emails where a business might be midstream, or they've made a decision on a property selection or a lease, and they find out that their operations are not really permitted in that, and that there's going to be a change in use or operations. Trying to get that word out before businesses make those decisions is key, and knowing where they are and what resources are available. Developing and promoting incentives, again, I talked about this, looking for funding opportunities for rural businesses through grant and loan programs. I met with a gentleman from the PG&E Economic Development portion, and was really amazed to find out that there is an economic development rate for new businesses that come here. They can receive as much as 12% off for a 5-year period. There are strict requirements in that this needs to be used as an economic development tool, so a decision process by a business to come here specifically to Calaveras County, that this would be one of the factors that would tip them in our way. So then there's the Opportunity Zone investment, which is free of capital gains. It's in Supervisor Garamendi's district. That was something that we were able to get in on, and still working through the IRS on what a defined Opportunity Zone fund is, but it's a great way for bringing outside resources and funding to our county in disadvantaged communities. And then the California Business Gateway, this is a wonderful tool for referring businesses to Calaveras County from the state. It is associated with their Go Biz program through the governor's office, and it's a great tool to get out there. Again, when I set it up with the state, they were like, where's Calaveras County? So it was nice to show other agencies that we are here and that we care and that we're working hard. And then the Recycling Market Development Zone, which we were approved by the state last month. So that was very exciting. So that will provide low interest loans to businesses in Calaveras County who want to take a waste product and manufacture it into something else. This is the acronym soup. I'm not going to go into a lot of this, but these are just the different resources and opportunities and grants that I've identified. I am making meetings and appointments with especially EDA. Melinda Matson, I'll be meeting with her later this week. And, there's a lot of opportunities that we'll be exploring. And these are things that I will be bringing before the board and our community to discuss and see how we want to proceed. Obviously, as a department of one, I can't apply for every grant that I would see, but I think that we can strategically work with other organizations and groups to be very selective and be successful. And then assisting in the workforce development and education outreach. There's a lot of opportunity there as well. I'll talk about the three-legged stool here in just a moment. But working with the business and industry, and especially the timber industry, and finding that there are some shortcomings with having skilled labor force, and that, they get people in there and they're there for a few months and then boom, they're gone. And that's a huge economic toll on our community and our education system. So working with Motherlode Job Training and the high schools and different work groups, and then promoting the workshops and training for businesses. And this is primarily through the Calaveras County Chamber of Commerce, where they have some great workshops for businesses to attend that can help them with, simple things, bookkeeping. It's not simple, bookkeeping, legislation, and so forth. So actions, creating and strengthening partnerships. The first 4 months, like I said, I met a lot of different folks and trying to figure out how we all fit together and work together, what our strengths and weaknesses are. There's some great people and very energy flowing. This is a really good time right now. And then, as I said, develop the economic development policy and measurable outcomes. So I started with a baseline of 0, which is interesting. I had nothing to start with or compare to. So we're going to get to that on the next page. So the solutions, supporting solutions to the three-legged stool, which is what I call it, where we have business and development and growth, we have a skilled workforce, and yes, I'm going to throw it out there. We have a workforce housing. I've heard this over and over again, that we have people that are working that can't afford to live here. And I'm like, how can you not afford to live here? It's very comparable. but they're finding that there's not a lot of inventory. We need to start looking at making sure that we have homes and apartments available for people that are trying to work. And working collaboratively through investment, bringing outside dollars into Calaveras County to research and explore changing and new opportunities, monitoring legislation. I try to do that in my spare time. So, and listen to what the businesses need, what they want. And it's very different community to community, just in the little bit that I've learned so far. So by the numbers, I've worked with 36 new businesses, 10 existing businesses, and 8 businesses that are considering expansion in our county. The potential for that is about 68 jobs. I've done 23 outreach and education events, reaching about 525 individuals. That was a lot of folks. I'm looking at 14 different grants and funding opportunities, and as I said, we have one regional application. We asked for $250,000 for the 5 counties in the Rural Economic Development Grant funding, and we were awarded $178,000. And then 9 workforce development projects working with 200 youth in our community, and 3 housing projects promoting 274 homes in our county. So just a real quick overview. Oh gosh, I really didn't even look at this stuff. So one of the questions that people have asked me are like, who are you working with? Well, of course, I maintain my confidentiality, but I can give you the basics. So in District 1, primarily industrial manufacturing, construction and retail sales, agriculture and farming. District 2, we're looking at industrial manufacturing, food and beverage, timber, and property development and recreation. District 3, lodging, tourism, agritourism, retail sales, technology and education. District 4, food and beverage, agricultural farming, retail, and housing. District 5, medical services, housing, construction, transportation, and retail. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions by the board? Supervisor Garamendi, your light's on.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. It's been a pleasure working with you those last 6 months. As we've gotten to know each other, I have a couple questions, and they kind of go on the line of kind of taking a Lewis Carroll approach, where the cat said, if you don't know where you're going, any direction will do. And so I was wondering if you could tell me, what does success look like in your role, and then how will you measure it?
I think the easiest way is with having a baseline of 0 and being able to track data. So how many businesses are opening, at what point are they staying successful or closing. I'm trying to find more information as far as retail sales, what the data is, and a lot of it is going to be information that I probably will need to get assistance with. I'm kind of starting from nothing and want to have something to compare by. So at least in starting my little spreadsheet, I'm able to track, okay, we start at 0. Also working with Barbara Sullivan, a business license, and tracking the business licenses as they come through. And also developing, I think I missed that part, the welcome packets, where when a new business gets a business license, to be able to actually send them information like, here's the resources, we'd like to reach out to you, and then tracking that over time. I know there's going to be a new business license software program, so then also looking at when business licenses are closed or businesses close. So there's going to be a compilation of data collection, and you're right, I'm kind of scattered. And so there might be a time when I need to have maybe some software or something that can help me track what's most important to the board.
So you'll be measuring the net, basically, as we go forward. Third question is, we came on board, we talked about developing, and I know you mentioned this, a strategic economic development plan for the county. What are you seeing, and how's that coming along, and when will we as a board sort of take on that issue and contribute? And how's that all going to come together?
Good question. So doing the business walks, which I hope to start this fall. The summer's a little bit hard to be out there walking and passing out. So I want to get that information this fall, and then based on that information, provide recommendations to the board. My goal is to have something to you by the end of this year. That might be a little overly aggressive, but that's my goal, is to have something to you with recommendations and have a policy that we can move forward on.
Thank you. I don't think it's being over-aggressive. My businesses in my community are telling me offline that they're down. And so having a plan so we can begin executing on it as soon as possible, we've got to see the sun at the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
Supervisor Mills?
Yes, Kathy, I appreciate your data. It's the second time I've seen it, and I've learned something again, simply because I didn't catch it the first time. Are you including the Angels Camp data in your work through?
Not technically, no. I certainly assist with businesses that are wanting to open an Angels Camp by simply referring them over to. There is a counterpart to me in Angels Camp, but not actively collecting that data.
I think considering the size of that community and what it brings to the district that I'm in, having that data would be a helpful tool to us, because it does have a sphere of influence to the rest of the county. Secondly, we know that the businesses in Copperopolis are up, and now that we've got the Copper Area Business Association revitalized and rolling again, there's opportunities within these business associations also to find out what their needs are and where they find they're feeling that you can to some degree be an ombudsman for them, breaking down some of those barriers. And I think oftentimes new businesses don't understand the barriers that they have to get past, and they have enthusiasm, but that only lasts for about 6 months. If you've been in a restaurant business, 6 months and they seem to hit a brick wall. And now that I'm understanding that we have 40 new homes coming into Copperopolis here very soon, that's just one more step in that right direction of generating the housing element that we need so desperately within the whole county. So thank you for what you're doing and the role you're playing to assist them and relieve their frustrations, because a lot of it is that they just don't know where to go or how to broach the issues, and they don't know what the priorities are and where to tackle with what first. And so that's hopefully the role you'll play with them and getting them on the ground and making a success.
That's my plan.
Supervisor Oliveira?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kathy, great presentation. I know you're working very hard. In some areas, in some communities and counties, there's incentives for bringing in commerce, bringing in businesses. A good example may be the 40 homes going into the Copper area. There's a procedure where some of those fees, the fees required, have been actually excused by counties to promote this business. Is that a successful program in your experience?
I have not seen it applied in a rural county. I know coming from Sacramento County, we did have some of those rebates or permit reduced fees. That is something that I certainly could look at as we go forward, but I have not seen it applied in a rural county.
Yeah, that was my question. If those systems are successful, would they be in a rural county such as ours? Maybe we could take a little look at that and come back to the board with some information.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Miller?
Yeah, thank you again. And I know this is one of the challenges, simply because infrastructure is a key component as to where you're going to site something. But if you're trying to put a fairly large piece on a lot, maybe we need to have some discussions with the water sewer districts as well as PG&E, and in what ways can we ensure that the district will receive their full money, but it isn't an upfront hit, but it's spread out over 5 years, however that might, and I know that that's being done in other communities in California. So I would ask that possibly we look to those water and sewer districts to see what they can give us to incentivize, especially promoting a new business in a location that probably they're right at that thread. They just need that extra push to get it there. And I'm referring to a situation that occurred in Valley Springs back in 1992 myself, where because we could not get the assistance of a water sewer district, the company walked away, and they're currently in Garland, Texas. So we have those opportunities. We just need to all work together and be on the same page.
Absolutely.
And we had that conversation, which I think you could be on the agenda coming up very soon for one of those districts.
Okay. Yes, I mean, it's very important that we work with all of our providers, our utility providers, our broadband internet providers, everybody working collaboratively.
Kathy, I just have a quick question, and it's kind of in line with Supervisor Oliveira's. At some point, is there a plan once you get all this together and later on in the year and you get comfortable with what you're going to be bringing to the board, that you will actively be going out recruiting businesses once you find out where we have industrial areas, manufacturing areas, and retail areas, that you can actually go out and reach out and recruit businesses into the county?
Absolutely, that's the plan. Especially attracting the right business to the right location. As I alluded to, we have some pretty amazing resources here. And businesses that actually do contact me with ideas, they're not ready yet. So I'm helping them grow their idea, put them in touch with resources and how to develop a plan. But certainly being active in attracting the right types of businesses to the right locations and actively recruiting. We have some amazing opportunities here for the right businesses.
Any other board questions, comments? If not, we'll open up to the public. Public comments, questions?
I'm making sure I'm not going to hit anybody else. Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I'm kind of delighted with Kathy. We had her on a Taxpayer Alert program, and she did really well. And talked about, it's kind of interesting, her part of her plan, as she mentioned, is to, for the remainder of the year, to contact businesses to see what their needs are, and then after developing that, put together a plan of solving the problems that they may have for retention purposes. I can just imagine in a rural county like ours with kind of conservative, how businesses would approach somebody saying, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. We'd have to word that a little bit different. We'd have to really ask what are the main problems you have, and then so that we can see if we can solve them. I'm a board member of the Copper Office Area Business Association, and we just had a meeting in which we're planning to put together packets for new businesses that come into that area. And one of the things that will be good for us to collaborate with Kathy to put the packages together would have more than just discount coupons. It could have information about county services and other things that relate to government that Kathy can help with. The Taxpayer Alert program also we also had a guest, Ken Perkins, who's suing Tuolumne County on economic development lack of sunshine, in which he objected to, and so did the grand jury, maybe not as much disclosure of expenses that they thought would be proper with a government agency. That problem seems to be headed off a little bit with Kathy being careful to keep track of her expenses and go through the CAO for approvals and even though she can keep confidentiality for people she's dealing with, the confidentiality wouldn't be something that would likely be forever. In other words, it disappears in a secret hole. Anyway, the Taxpayer Association is really happy to sponsor her on her program, and we'll see what develops over the coming year.
Ben Stopper, District 5. I'm glad I waited for you to get up first, Al. You addressed a lot of things I was going to address. I went to the Chamber of Commerce meeting last Thursday. where they did their presentation. There was multiple other people from state agencies and so on and so forth when it came to economic development. Seems key that we do have a strategic plan moving forward. So I agree with Al about how this is proceeding, and moving forward, we do need to keep a strategic plan in mind, how we want to proceed with Calaveras County, and at the same time with finishing the general plan in the future, we need to keep those in line so that we know what types of uses belong where in our different areas within Calaveras County. One thing on reporting I would ask is, was something as big as this, with government getting involved with business, that reporting out more often than biannually would be crucial. Understanding that, look, you started from your 0 point 5 to 6 months ago. With your final page on there, your 5-month overview, 36 businesses that are new, so on and so forth. I think it's crucial also that reporting how many businesses closed down. You could separate that out by businesses that are closed down by, like, let's say a ban, so those businesses, you know, had no choice but to close down, but also other businesses that closed down separate from any type of law that was passed that forced them out. Because that, you know, if you take in 36 but you lose 50, we're not making progress. 40 homes is good going into Copperopolis. We need more. When you talk about a living wage, with the building permit fees being through the roof and the cost of homes going in, you know, living wage can afford an older house, because I recently am working on buying a second home, and through the loan process, I went through like multiple amounts, and let's just say, for one example, I put down $250,000 with taxes and everything. We're looking at about $1,400 a month in payments, so on and so forth. So a living wage, how does that apply, especially when it comes to new homes and what we're doing to people with excessive permit fees, so on and so forth? That this all comes together with part of the strategic plan. We need places for people to live when they get the jobs. Thank you.
Almost good afternoon. Beth Whitkey, District 5. I wanted to talk about the lack of housing and the fact that 8.06 and the new building codes make it so that it's a disincentive to rebuild here. I have property in another state that does not require anything but electrical inspections and sewage inspections. And other than that, people are allowed to build what they deem safe. And if it doesn't pass inspections, you can't sell your house, you can't get loans. So I don't think that the housing options, you know, there is a lack of stock. There are not a lot of opportunities for people to find rentals in this county because we lost so much in the Butte fire. So I would like to propose that along with the economic development part, we look at scaling back code compliance barriers for people rebuilding in the burn scar. I think that will promote more construction businesses. It will promote more people will be able to buy building materials in the now struggling D2 lumberyard. It's really frustrating to hear. We don't understand why people can't find a place to live when rents are through the roof. There's very few to choose from, and people just don't have many options. You know, I bought in another district because I'm probably going to have to start commuting to Sacramento to find a job. And I had a good job in District 2 with cannabis. That ban destroyed my business. I may be able to get it back, you know, with my years of experience. But I just think it's important for economic development to take a harder look at some of the systemic issues in the county where we don't have enough housing. I'm told that I have to put a sprinkler system in my house that doesn't have a neighbor for a quarter mile. My house didn't burn in the butte, but it was damaged. If I had had a sprinkler system in the house, it would have been a total loss for water damage. These are all things the county can opt out of. And same with, you know, tempered glass. There's all these incredible barriers to rebuilding. And I just don't know how people are supposed to start businesses when the county revokes your permit after you spent all your money. And I think that we need to look at code compliance, and we need to look at some of these things, and instead of making them more onerous, make them more user-friendly. Thank you.
After looking at your presentation, I'm delighted you're here. I mean, it's just like there's so hope now that since there's an outlook that the ban is gone and that the safety issue is not overwhelming anymore for a new business to come and be threatened by vagrants and all this stuff. The whole attitude of Calaveras County is that we are a beautiful place. Visitors come here. There's what you described as resources. It's so exciting to feel like there's promotion going forward in something that's going to be beneficial to all of us. If we get businesses, people come, houses get built, things just go. It's just like the spark has to be ignited, and you're it. I'm so glad you're here.
One of the reasons that housing is short is because people are growing marijuana in the houses instead of people living there. And I don't know how that affects her and her job, but it certainly affects people who want to move here and can't afford to. It affects people that live here and find themselves having to move and can't find a place that is within their means. And so I just want to remind you that there is ongoing marijuana being grown in homes that could allow people to have a home and a roof over their head. Thank you.
There's people standing in line back there.
No, how could you do that?
Good morning. I just want to tell you thank you for what you've been doing. I am an owner of a business, and one of the things that I had a question about is what about incentives for existing businesses? PG&E is not any cheaper for me. Water is going up, and next year the wages are going to go up, and so I'm looking at a bunch of storefronts in San Andreas that are empty, and I'm happy and I see hope, but it just seems like when I'm talking to people who are trying to renovate or do anything like that, they're like, the county's slow, they pushed it back, they did this, they did that. And so that is really concerning for restaurants and stuff that are trying to go in Valley Springs is one that I'm thinking of right now. People who are still trying to build their homes and they're getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. It's taking something from 7 to 9 weeks for somebody to build a home right now just to get the permit. And so anyways, I just wanted to tell you thank you so much for what you're doing.
Good afternoon. Yep. I would like to agree about the part with the comment about marijuana being grown in homes. And in my comments on the draft EIR that was used to support the ban, one of my comments was that it would impact the county's available housing stock, but more to really bedrooms. and available rooms for actual human habitation, because your ordinance prohibits anyone from growing plants, even the 6 that they're supposed to be allowed to, and I believe the voters that voted for Prop 64, which I'm not one, by the way, I thought it was a terrible piece of legislation, that you require them to take up space that could have been taken up by people living. And this is in an environment when a few thousand people were displaced from their homes in D2 by the Butte Fire. And as Beth mentioned, and others, the requirements for building homes is becoming ridiculously onerous and prohibitive in an environment where the county government is complaining about the lack of housing stock and how it impacts your ability to hire people. I generally prefer an incentive approach to just about everything when you're trying to manage behavior than a punitive approach. I mean, even dog trainers know better than that. What's the last point I want to make here? It's escaped my mind. That's what happens when I come up here without notes. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Vicki Reinke, Calaveras Republican Party, and I just too wanted to thank you for the work you're doing in our county. From your presentation, it looks like we're heading in the right direction, and thank you for your first step to go to the businesses that are already here and find out what's going on. And of course, the comments that were just all made, I think we found something we can all agree on, and that's we're overregulated in this county and we can't get anything done. So hopefully that's something you'll come across and be able to help figure out. Thank you.
I also just want to thank you for your presentation and the work you're doing. And I also believe that developing the economy in Calaveras is going to have a lot to do with promoting and advertising what we have here. The reason my wife and I moved to Calaveras County is we didn't know much about this county at all, but we moved up here because my wife loves horses, and we had been to some horsemanship clinics in the county and saw the rural environment. It's a good place to have horses. A lot of people probably don't know how many trails we have here. My wife is out several times a week riding different trails within just a few minutes of our home. And those type of things, if we promote that, will draw more people into our county. We have incredible equine places to ride. And not only that, but they're also available for hikers on foot. Sometimes when we're riding, we see people that are hiking. And we need to let people know about that, let them know about our other resources. I know there are other times I came to Calaveras County. I came up here camping one time, and I came to visit some of the caves. I didn't even know I was in Calaveras County. But after I moved here, I realized that these were places I had been coming and enjoying, and had those things be promoted more, I think we'd draw more people in. So this is exciting that we're going to be doing more of that. And I think all of us need to help get the word out that there's a Facebook page, a website, and let people know, check it out, check out Calaveras County. It's a great place to come. Another thing that will help our economy also is there tends to be a resistance to new businesses coming into some areas because people are afraid of the competition. I know in Valley Springs we have one grocery store now. Unfortunately, because there's only one, there's not competition, so prices are high, and I hate to do it, but sometimes we have to go to Jackson to shop because I can get twice as many groceries if I go to Jackson as I can shopping local. And there needs to be a challenge to our businesses to try to be more in line with what people can get outside of the county, and we'll stay here. I know there's a gas station down in Wallace that's changed ownership a number of times, and I used to hate it because I'd drive by there when I was commuting. And I'd like to buy gas there because it's close, be easy to stop there, but unfortunately many times I just drove as far as I could because I could get gas for 10, 20 cents a gallon cheaper. You know, in our businesses here, if we could educate them and they realize that they can become more competitive, people will make it a habit to stop at the businesses here and keep the money in the county. And we try as often as we can to do that, to spend as much and keep as much in our county. But sometimes you just have to go outside because you can't afford to shop here. And those are other things I think will help develop the economy in the county, is to allow more businesses to come in, because I was in retail, and competition actually stimulates business. It doesn't hurt business. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. Speaking of economic development and recycling, I have two suggestions to put some energy into, or at least to put some thought into. A few years back, I proposed a project which was what I call it was the poop factory, which would be a giant composting site somewhere in the county, accessible, where yard waste, manure, sewage, effluents could all be combined and dumped off and made into giant bags of compost. At the time, I suggested a tax on every property owner who would in return, $5 tax, in return would get a bag of compost, but it could be used to build the site where the compost factory was created. We know we've got plenty of sewage and manure, so that's something that a resource that is ongoing, produced in our county. My second suggestion would be to induce Kmart to come to our county. We don't have a Walmart. Jackson had a Kmart and a Walmart right next to each other for 10, 15 years, and one of them had to go out of business. A Kmart in our county would attract some of the people that go out of county to do their purchasing, and if there was a site, I would imagine somewhere between San Andreas and Angels Camp that could be designated as a site for Kmart to build and create their own department store, I think it would be successful in our county. And to go back to the poop factory or the compost factory, in my mind, I had a whole advertising scheme already thought up, and it would be that all the supervisors would have bags of compost with their name on it that could be used to promote the factory as well as county government. It could be clever names like Michael's Manure or something like that, the people in your district could access through their taxes that bag of compost and probably buy more. Whether it's chipping or compost or yard waste, I think it's important to think that there are those resources we could use. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Any other board comments, questions? Kathy, you have some final?
The only thing I have to say is anybody that has questions, ideas, my door is always open. I'm in this building down at the end of the hall. I welcome your thoughts, your suggestions, and please bring me any ideas and thoughts.
Board, this is informational, so we don't need to act on any of it. And at this time, we're going to take lunch break. We're going to take lunch from 12:15 to 1:45. 1:45. So we're at lunch.